It's Nick Black, and I'm talking to Joey Molland out there in South Carolina. Now, I've never called anybody in South Carolina. What are you doing there, Joey? You're a long way from home.
Hello, Nick. I am. We started a tour last night, the 50 Years Go Today tour, featuring Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees, Todd Rundgren, Christopher Cross, Jason Sheff from the Chicago band, and myself. And we started the show in Atlantic City, and we're on our way to Florida, and we've done a mandatory bus stop because the drivers have to rest halfway through the journey. We'll be leaving at 2 o'clock in the morning to go to Florida.
Gee, they're keeping you busy, aren't they?
Yes, they are. We've got 30 dates to do, 23 on this tour, and then we have a little break, and then we're going out in December for another 8 or 10 shows before Christmas.
So this is the 50th anniversary of the White Album, is it?
Yeah.
Which songs do you sing?
I'm singing Dear Prudence, Cry Baby Cry, Revolution Number 1, Savoy Truffle, and Good Night. I sing along on some of the other ones, Birthday, a couple of the other songs.
I'm glad they haven't dumped Revolution Number 9 on you, Joey.
Well, I don't know, it'd be quite easy to sing that, wouldn't it? Number 9.
Now, are you able to sleep on the bus?
Oh, yeah, it's a proper rock and roll tour bus.
Now, I detect a Liverpudlian accent, so you were born... Now, I've got here... Is it Edge Hill, Liverpool?
Yeah, I was born in Edge Hill, Liverpool 8, yeah.
What sort of suburb is that? Is that middle, lower, upper class?
It's about 3 miles from the city centre, maybe 4. Working class neighbourhood. Edge Hill is a big railway station in Liverpool. It was just a little terrace house, 2 up and 2 down. I was born in the front parlour with an outside toilet.
The good old days, Joey.
We had gas lights and stuff like that. Didn't have electric lights until I was maybe, I think, 6 years old. And we moved to a house. We had electric lights. That was down in Sefton Park. Yeah.
How close is that to Edge Hill?
Oh, it's a couple of miles away, maybe 3 or 4 miles away. It was a bit nicer. The house was a bit bigger. My mum and dad had 6 kids, so it gave us more room. I shared a bedroom when we moved to the bigger house with 2 of my brothers, my younger brother Doug and my elder brother Gordon. All 3 of us shared the room.
Must have been a better house if it had electricity.
It had electricity. Yeah, it was a much nicer place. It really was. We had a big back parlour to fool around in, and that was where we eventually had a television when we got a telly. We had a nice front parlour with my mum's pride and joy, and nice dressers and nice couch and all that stuff. It even had a bay window.
Your mum would have been a homemaker, and what did your dad do?
My dad was in the army at the time when I was young. I was born in 1947, 2 years after the Second World War ended, and my father was in the army until about 1958, 59. When he was demobbed, they reduced the size of the army, and then he was an engineer, then he was a garage mechanic, really. And that's what he did for the rest of his life, fixing automobiles for people.
And what about your siblings? Did anyone else go into music?
Not in a professional manner. My brother Chris played in a band in Liverpool. I can't remember the name of them, I'm ashamed to say. He was very encouraging to me as a boy. He had the records that I learned to play off, the Buddy Holly stuff, and I learned my Chuck Berry and things like that from the radio. Yeah, Chris played in a band. My other brother, Gordon, was a roadie for The Who eventually. He was in the Air Force. All my brothers were in the forces. All my older brothers. 2 of them were in the English Navy. 1 was in the Army and 1 was in the Air Force.
Where did the musical gene come from, Joey?
I don't know. I think from my dad. My dad always was very musical. He played the harmonica. He really encouraged us to play music and enjoy it. He was very cool about all that stuff.
Was your mum into music as well?
No, not really. My mum was a happy person. I guess a perfect mum, you'd think. She just was concerned looking after us, and my dad was the worker. That's all he did every day. I was just thinking about him today, how he pretty much worked every day of his life to support us. He was great. He gave me a great work ethic. And like I say, when I got my opportunities as a musician, well, both of them were full of encouragement for me. My mum was very proud. They used to sit me on the back of the couch and have me play the guitar for our neighbours.
How old were you then?
I was about 12, 13. I was just getting started. I'd heard Elvis on the radio. This was 1958. I was a perfectly normal young boy playing footy and soccer and a bit of cricket with the family and making bows and arrows and all that. Spears, crossbows. crossbones. That was the thing. And I was trying to learn how to fix things like my dad could. My dad was a whiz at fixing stuff, so I was trying to learn that, fixing my bike and everything. That's all I was concerned with. And then I heard Elvis on the radio singing Blue Suede Shoes, and I'll never forget it. For some reason, that really spared me to go and get my brother's guitar out and start learning to play. Can't explain it, but that's exactly what happened to me. It was a beautiful sunny day, summer day in Liverpool, and I was in the back kitchen of the house, and the guy said, and there's a new record from Elvis Presley. I can remember the record that was on before. It was Johnny Duncan and the Bluegrass Boys, with an Irish country western band. And the song they played was Last Train to San Fernando. I can remember it as clear as a bell. And Elvis came on. It was just stunning to me, that record. I don't know if your listeners are familiar with that record, but it is Elvis, and it is Elvis at his smoking best. Unbelievable.
Did you have dreams of playing for Liverpool or even Everton?
Oh, no. I wasn't good enough for that. There were always guys in the school that could really play soccer. And there were plenty of those in the schools I went to, so I never even dreamt about being a soccer player,
You listen to Elvis and you're keen on the guitar, and that would have been around the skiffle craze. Did you get into skiffle?
Not really. I was familiar with a couple of the big skiffle artists, Lonnie Donegan mainly. There were some other ones that played like a traditional jazz like Chris Barber, but I really got right into rock and roll and rhythm and blues. And when I say rhythm and blues, I'm talking about Chuck Berry mainly, although I didn't discover him until I'd been playing for maybe a year or so. And I started really listening to the radio, and I'd hear the European stations. We only had the BBC in England, so they didn't play that much of it. Radio Luxembourg was a great station. They played all those American records. Tommy Tucker, High Heel Sneakers. I'm sure you've heard of that. That's just the way it went. That was the kind of music I liked, and that's what I listened to.
How did you join a band? I've got here, I don't know if there's an earlier band, The Assassins.
That was at school, that was. There were a couple of kids in my class. In England, they have these exams called the 11 Plus. And if you pass that exam, you go to a technical school or something, because you show a little bit higher intelligence. And I scored really well in the 11 plus exam, and they sent me to a grammar school. And I went up there and started studying the sciences and some languages. And I met a couple of kids in the school there, and we got a little band together playing our Chuck Berry stuff. It was fun.
When did you leave school? How old were you?
For one reason and another, I got expelled from the grammar school for playing truant, and also for doing things like playing the piano in the chapel, playing rock and roll music.
You weren't playing the dreaded boogie woogie, were you?
I certainly was. The song I was playing when I got caught was What Did I Say, the Ray Charles, but the Jerry Lee Lewis's version. I tell you, by the time I got to that stage, and I was about 12 now, maybe getting on 13, I'd met a keyboard player in Liverpool, a piano player named Chris Finley, who was my age. Chris has passed away now, but we were friends for the rest of our lives. One of the most talented guys I'd ever met in my life, and to this day, really. One of those guys who could play anything. And I tried to get him in Badfinger years later, but he preferred to live in Liverpool and play with his mates in Liverpool than to join Badfinger and get on the road with it. Don't know why, but that was just his preference. We would have had him in the band because he was so good. Great singer, great player. He rocked like mad. Anyway, I'd learned to play a little bit of piano myself. I'd learned to play, obviously, What Did I Say? And they caught me playing it in the chapel at the grammar school. And it was a Catholic grammar school, and the chapel was a very hairy place to be playing rock and roll piano. So they threw me out, and I went back to a primary school, we call them in England, and I left there when I was 15 because my studies at the grammar school were already ahead of the normal primary school education. I left them. I got a job working at the Pacific Steam Navigation Company, which was a shipping company with liners. I'm talking about boats here, ships. I was a messenger boy there, and that's how I started going to the cabin and all that, because I'd take mail from the boats, from the ships, from the captains and the pursers and the stewards and all that. I'd take it all to the head office downtown, and they'd send it on to where it was going, or they'd deal with it if it was kind of official business. And I took messages from the head office to the boats and took it around the boats in the Liverpool docks. That was my working career. The important thing was I started to go to the cabin. And one day, while I was in town, I met a guy, a fellow named Pete Wiggins, and he stopped me in the street, and he said, "Are you Joey Molland?" And And I said, yes, I am. And he said, do you still play the guitar? And I said, yeah. And apparently he'd seen me playing on the street corners in Liverpool in my neighbourhood. Me and my friends used to play on the corners. That was the place where we could play our guitars. I said I was Joey Molland and I did have a guitar. And he asked me, did I want to go and play with the band that night? And he had a band. He was in a band called The Profiles. And that's where I started really playing with a band. And they paid me. They paid me £1 for playing that night. Asked me back the next night.
You're already famous in Liverpool.
Well, I guess I was. I guess I had a little bit of a gift for playing. People knew me a little bit. I played in a couple of pubs with my friend, the guy that I used to play with on the corners. His name was Peter Edge. You can find him on Facebook.
No relation to Graham Edge from the Moodies.
No relation to Graham. Still a great friend of mine. We have a quick pint when we go back to England, or maybe not so quick, but we have a couple of pints together when I go back there. He's very happily married and living a good life. Yeah.
Did you still keep the day job when you were getting that £1 by the Profiles?
I did for a while, yeah. I had no idea really about playing in a group. I was really surprised to be asked. I thought the standards were so high that I really wouldn't be able to do that. But I loved it, and I kept on playing, and I did get asked by that guy, and one thing led to another. He took me to some nightclubs in Liverpool, one being the Blue Angel, which was a famous club, late-night drinking club, and they had the residency there, the Masterminds. They were a very, very good band. And I used to go down there after our sets, after the Profile shows had finished. I'd go down the Blue, and I'd get up with the Masterminds and play. And after a while, one of the guitar players decided he was going to pack it in. So they asked me, did I want to join? And I did. And I started playing with them. Played with them for a couple of years.
Were you playing with the Profiles at the same time?
No, I'd left the Profiles and started playing with the Masterminds.
Was there more money in the Masterminds?
It was a little more money, not much. Maybe instead of getting £1 a night, I'd get £1.50 or £2. They were the resident band at that Blue Angel Club, so I did get a little bit more money. But to tell you the truth, Nick, I didn't really pay a lot of attention to it, and I can't really remember how much I got paid. I was just enjoying myself so much. It was like a dream come true to play with 4 or 5 guys. We had a 5-piece band, actually, and just play. Finley came and played piano in that band too, Chris Finley. So it was just great. We had a great time for a couple of years.
You recorded as well?
That's right, yeah. I was going to tell that story. We had a roadie that was very much a fan of Bob Dylan, and he used to play his Bob Dylan records, his early records. And we weren't really big fans of Bob Dylan at the time. We were playing Stax music and Atlantic and Tamla Motown and Chuck Berry and rhythm and blues like that, rock and music. So Bob Dylan really didn't have a lot of attraction for us, but we liked a song that he did called She Belongs to Me, and we started to do it in the show, in one of our sets. One night at the Blue Angel, now I should explain, the Blue Angel was a late night club, cocktails and stuff, and the bands and the musicians that came and played the big shows in town, the star bands, they came down to the Blue after their show usually, and they'd have a couple of drinks and hang out. And this night, the Rolling Stones came in. And Andrew Luke Oldham was with them. Now, Andrew was their manager. I'm sure you've heard of him. And we played She Belongs to Me during one of the sets that night. And after we played it, Andrew came over to us, Andrew Luke Oldham, and he thought it was great. He thought it was great that we were doing a Bob Dylan song, and he thought that we did a great version of it. And he asked us, did we want to go and make a record of it? And so that was the start of our recording, or my recording career.
He ran and owned Immediate Records at the time, didn't he?
That's right. Yeah, he'd produced the Rolling Stones albums, already had a record label, Immediate Records. Yeah, he was really plugged in. He was a really happening bloke.
And on the other side of the Bob Dylan track, there's a song called Taken My Love, which is an original.
Yeah, it was written by George Cassidy, our bass player, Dougie Meakin, who was the leader of the Masterminds. Dougie Meakin was the lead singer and the leader. Yeah, they wrote a song for the B-side, Taken My Love. If you look on the record, it doesn't have Dougie Meakin and George Cassidy. It has this other guy listed as the writer.
Not Alan Freed.
No, it wasn't Alan Freed, no.
I think he did things like that, didn't he?
Yeah, I think a couple of things like that. It was common in the music business in those days. It was even common all the way up, that kind of thievery. And that's what it is, really. Thievery was rampant in the music business, and for all I know, it still is rampant in the music business, especially on the business side of music. I mean, it's incredible. Even today, musicians and songwriters don't get really paid for their work. They get paid less now than when we were working. Badfinger and all that.
I know. Well, these days, the real money is when a big artist comes over, they sell T-shirts for $50. That's how they make the money.
That's the only way you can make money.
Yeah, the merchandise and the live shows.
Yes. They used to do live shows to promote your new record. And hopefully you'd sell a few and you can make some money that way. Nowadays, you put records out to promote yourself and maybe get live shows. That's where you make your money. The record business is not for the artist and not for the writer or the creative person. It really isn't. Doesn't it suck that?
Yeah.
It's really quite legal to do that. Got to say this, man. It astounds me that these people sit in their boardrooms and make conscious decisions not to pay royalties.
I think they work on the reasoning, if we can get away with it, we will. So let's try get away with it, and if we get caught, oh well, we don't have to pay much.
They make a settlement.
Yes, exactly.
They never have to pay all the money. They never pay all the money. They never will. They're greedy, man. That's all they know is greed. Greed, I hope they hear me. They have no scruples.
Their motto is, the money is the honey. Anyway, who produced the record, Joey?
Our first record was produced by Andrew Lugold, produced it himself. We did it at the Regent Sound studio on Denmark Street. It was on Tin Pan Alley in London. We couldn't believe how good the band sounded.
How did you adjust to working in the studio?
Well, we were so used to playing together, and we had no idea about playing in a studio. We just did what they told us. They were masters at it. We knew they'd already made records, so we didn't even try and guess our way through it. We just did what we were told. And when we heard the sound of the band that they recorded, it was really fantastic. It's like a miracle. We were knocked out.
Joey, you were masterminds. You probably all got 11 out of 11 in those exams.
Yeah.
And you know what? They've brought back the Mastermind quiz show on TV here.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Is that where Dougie got the name from?
That's exactly right. That's where they got the name for the TV show, from our band.
Yeah. Joey, I should have guessed that, shouldn't I?
Yes.
Up next was the Merseys. You played for the Merseys. So what happened to the Masterminds? You left them, or did they break up? What happened?
Well, the Merseys were the Mersey Beats originally, and they broke up. And the two singers, Billy Kinsley and Tony Crane, they decided to be a singing duo, and they came to Liverpool looking for a backup band. They wanted Liverpool guys because they were from Liverpool. It's funny because all these things tie into what happened eventually in my career. But yeah, I desperately wanted to do it. We'd had the record out with the Masterminds, and we'd done a couple of years of shows on the strength of it, playing all over England and going to Scotland and all that stuff. It really kind of moved us up a little bit. But we ended up back at the Blue Angel. We were just playing there again. And then this opportunity arose. They came and they asked George Cassidy, our bass player, they asked Chris Finley, the keyboard player, and they asked me to come and play in the backup band. And they already had two drummers, that they were going to use a band with two drummers. And that became the band, and it was the Fruit Eating Bears. Yeah, we had Kenny Mundy playing drums and Kenny Goodless playing drums, two of the best drummers from Liverpool. It was great. We went on the road with the Merseys. They had a huge hit record called Sorrow. With your long blonde hair and your eyes are blue. That huge record, and we went on tours. We started to do theatre shows, big theatre shows, and played all over the place. We even went to Paris, played at the Moulin Rouge.
Was that your first trip overseas?
It was. It was also my first flight. We took a Trident jet out of London. It was incredible. It was like getting on a rocket ship.
Were you nervous up in the air?
No, the flight wasn't long enough to get nervous. It's only like a 20-minute, half-an-hour flight to Paris from London.
You don't live in Australia then? Just to get over the other side of the country is 4 hours, I think.
Yeah, Australia's a huge, beautiful country. Yeah, it wasn't like that at all.
I wonder if David Bowie was in Paris because, you know, he covered that song famously, didn't he, Sorrow?
That's right. He really liked it. There was an incident a couple of years later. We played a club down in southern England near London, and I got an electric shock that night. Nearly died, actually. Fried my right hand.
Oh, no, geez. You could have been like Les Harvey from Stone the Crows.
Yeah, it was like that kind of thing. Pretty serious. They fried my hand, but you know what I did? I used a thumb pick and played the next night.
Excellent.
We were a very busy band. But David Bowie was at that show because he loved that song Sorrow so much. Yeah. That's a fact.
Gary Walker and the Rain comes next. So what happened to your gig in the Merseys?
You know what happens with a lot of bands, the gig lasted a couple of years. It was like 1967 now. I was about 20 years old, and I was actually with a band going from Liverpool. We didn't really have a name or anything. We were just a bunch of mates, and we were going to Sweden. We'd heard there were a lot of gigs for bands in Sweden, and so we got somebody with a van, and we were driving to Sweden, and while we were going through London on the way, it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. On the way through London, we called some girls that we knew, a girl named Deirdre Meehan and another girl, Sheila Reid, who I particularly fancied, actually. We called them, and Deirdre told me that Gary Walker, there was a band called the Walker Brothers. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yes, we've actually had Gary on the show.
Oh, okay. Well then, yeah. So Gary was forming a band. I went over there and knocked on Gary's front door. I got out of the van in London, carried my guitar with me, and I knocked on his door, and he said, "Oh, man, you look like Paul McCartney. Can you sing like him?" And I said, "Well, sure I can, you know."
And you said I can play bass like him as well.
Well, he asked me could I play the guitar like Eric Clapton, because I needed an Eric Clapton guitar player. I told him, "Sure I can." And I bent a string for him. Woo! That was good enough, and I got the job. And so I was with Gary Walker and the Rain now, and I was with them for maybe a year and a half, 2 years.
They're cult heroes because a lot of people, including me, love that #1 album.
Yeah. And, you know, it surprises me, and it always did surprise me, because it was a record that I played on. It was pretty much the first album I'd ever made. But we did our best, and I started to write songs at that period. Gary really encouraged me. I wrote tunes for his lyrics. He wrote lyrics for me. We collaborated on a bunch of songs. I think I wrote about half of the album, maybe a little more even. And I believe a couple of the songs were quite successful in Japan.
They released the album in Japan. And you also did an Aussie cover, an Easy Beats cover.
That's right. Come in, you'll get pneumonia.
Which is a great song, and that sounds like a hard song to do.
It was a hard song to do. It was very difficult for us because we weren't very good musicians even at that point. You know, so.
Except for you, of course. Except for you.
The Easy Beats were, of course, were great. They'd done that great record, Friday on My Mind. Incredible record. Yeah, smoking band. You guys should be really proud of them. I'm sure you are.
They even made a mini-series about them here recently.
Did they?
Yeah.
Good on you. Good on you, man. Yeah. So, yeah, we recorded that song. It was our second single, actually. It didn't get anywhere.
The Easy Beats didn't get anywhere with it either, so... I think it's just too complicated for a single back in the day. I think it's just too...
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it had all those... It had weird kind of runs in it and stuff.
It was very dramatic.
Yeah. I mean, you get pneumonia. Yeah.
Did you guys tour overseas as well as Gary Walker and the Rain?
We did. We actually went to Japan in 1968. Gary would tell us on the plane, I'm not kidding, he said, when we get there, it's going to be like you're in the Beatles. The crowds are going to freak out. And we're all saying, yeah, Gary, sure, it's going to be great. When we got to the airport there were thousands of girls waiting for us. And they followed us in their taxis and vans and buses all the way into town. We stayed at the New Japan Hotel, and they followed us all the way there, screaming and hollering out of the windows of their cars. We couldn't believe it. It was actually like that. We had a fabulous time when we were there, playing to sell-out crowds and huge fan club meetings. They'd bring us gifts. We had 5 rooms full of gifts that we had to leave in Japan when we left, because we would have had to rent another plane to fly it all back. We played big theatres, maybe 3,000 to 4,000 seaters.
Lucky you didn't do your Paul McCartney imitation by putting some hash in your suitcase.
It is a good look, yeah.
Obviously, Gary Walker, even though it's a big cult album now and the singles are cult items too, they just didn't hit it big.
No, and that's why a couple of years after that, Gary Walker and the Rain broke up, and I went back to Liverpool and was just knocking around in Liverpool, playing with my friends and doing a couple of things. I played with the Mersey Beats for a little bit up there, and I just played around town, really. And then 69, the end of 69, here's where the Mersey Beats story continues. Billy was a good friend of the Beatles from the Mersey Beat days, right? Because they were the same kind of generation. They were like local bands in Liverpool. And so Billy, when the Beatles formed Apple, the Mersey Beats weren't really functioning anymore. Billy Tinsley started doing sessions for Apple, playing bass. and singing things. He's a great singer, Billy Kinsley, still to this day, and still a great friend of McCartney's, actually. So Billy, when he heard that the Iveys, the Iveys had signed to Apple Records, right?
The pre-Badfinger name.
Yeah, the Iveys were with Apple Records. They'd recorded a couple of singles, and they'd recorded an album by the Iveys. I think it was called Maybe Tomorrow, the album. Tony Visconti produced it, big-time producer. And there was a song on there, Maybe Tomorrow, which the Iveys really thought was going to be a big hit record. And everybody was giving them the okay and the thumbs up sign. This was it. They were going to break. And, of course, the record came out and it didn't do anything.
They probably would have had to have waited for tomorrow. Sorry about that,
Oh,
Joe.
you're a funny man. You're a funny man. Yes, I don't know why you've got this.
Well, maybe tomorrow I'm funny. Sorry, Joe. I've interrupted with my silly jokes.
That's okay. Yeah. It's okay. It's good. A little humour is always good. And believe me, we're going to need it in this story.
Badfinger. Don't depress us too much, otherwise. Yeah, sorry, Joe.
Yeah.
You were saying Maybe Tomorrow flopped.
Okay. Maybe Tomorrow flopped, and the bass player did an interview for an English music magazine, and they asked him, Ron Griffith his name was, they asked him, Ron, what's it like working with the Beatles? What's it like being on the Beatles Apple record label? And Ron said, in all honesty, it hasn't really helped us much. Well, don't you know that the next week, Paul McCartney, Sir Paul, comes around to their house with a cassette of a song called Come and Get It. And he tells them...
He got the hint from Ron, obviously.
Yes, indeed. And I think he was a little frustrated with what Ron had said. And he took them the song round, and he told them if they learned it, just like he'd recorded his demo now, just this way, I'll come back in a week and I'll take you in the studio and produce a record for you, and it'll be your first hit. And him being Paul McCartney, he was absolutely right. He did come back that next week, and he did take them in the studio, and he did produce it, and it did indeed go on to be their first hit record. In the meantime, however, the bass player somehow mysteriously left the band. And it was decided that Tommy Evans would play the bass and that they would start looking for a guitar player. And at the same time, they started to look for a new name. They wanted to be a more rock and roll sounding name, and they wanted a guitar player who could play a bit of rock and roll and maybe take them a little bit in that direction. And so they auditioned 25, 26, 27 guitar players or something. Then Billy Kinsley, who tried to get the job playing bass for the Iveys, was told they're not going to get a bass player, they want a guitar player. And Billy told them, I've made that a little confusion there, but the gist is right. They tell Billy that they're looking for a guitar player, and he tells them, get this guy Joey Molland from Liverpool. He's just what you need. And so they did. They got in touch with me, and I went down to audition. And that's cutting a bit of a story short, but I went down and auditioned, and I got the job. And that same day, Neil Aspinall, the Beatle roadie and head of Apple Records, suggested the name Badfinger.
A great name.
Yeah, it all came together on that same day, and there it is.
And that's where your trouble started. You guys made some fantastic records, and I suppose, like it or not, you're always going to be associated with Badfinger because Ham and Evans and you just wrote some fantastic songs, great albums, and hopefully, has all the legal stuff been sorted out finally?
Oh, yeah. No, obviously, we had all the success and everything, but like you say, Pete wrote those big, giant hits, and we all contributed to songs, loads of songs. We got quite famous. It was very good. We got involved with the music business, which is just crooks, and they took us to the cleaners. But we were still who we were and doing what we were doing. We toured all over the place. And Europe and America really was where we were popular. And it was very good. We had a great time, but the band started to fracture. Peter really believed in the managers in New York, and the rest of us wanted to get rid of them. We knew they were stealing all the money, and Pete just didn't believe it. So eventually it led to the band breaking up. I left in November of 74, came to America with my wife in early 75. The Badfinger band went in back in the studio and recorded another album, and Warner Brothers didn't like it and they shelved it immediately. They didn't even put it out. And of course in April, Peter found out, in fact, that we were right and he was wrong. When he asked for money, he was told that he didn't have any money, even though he'd written day after day, No Matter What, Baby Blue, and he co-wrote Without You with Tommy Evans.
Apparently he didn't even have enough money to pay for his food.
No, he didn't. He didn't have any money at all. None of the band did. When I left Badfinger, I had $700. That's all I had. We were doing 120 shows a year at least. We were making about $7,000 a night. We were getting enormous checks because we wrote all our own music, and we were on the radio all over the world. So the money we were making was really, it was actually millions of dollars. Somebody calculated it was around $7 million that we lost. And Pete was astounded to find out that not only were we right about it, and I think it weighed on him that he was really responsible for breaking up the band. We didn't break up because we were fighting, because we didn't like each other. We enjoyed making records. The records proved that. You know what I mean?
Those people who stole the money, they were so greedy they killed the golden goose.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's perfect. Perfect, yeah.
Do you think that his suicide was part of the shame of being so wrong?
I'm not sure that maybe contributed a little bit, but it was the position he'd got himself in. His wife was having a baby. He'd placed all his faith in those people, and Pete was a very kind of faithful guy. He put a lot of faith in those managers. He couldn't believe that they were actually doing that, and I think that's what really got to him. He couldn't pay for his wife's dressing gowns to go to hospital with to have the baby. There were some other factors involved there, and who knows why somebody does what he did, but those things definitely contributed to it. For a while, there were things going around that maybe Polly had him killed. Yeah, there were things like that. There were notes that were passed around, and Bill Collins actually got the notes. He got letters from Polly about it, and we never saw them, but there were rumors about that going around. It was atrocious.
Who was this Polly?
Polly was the guy who was the manager, the business manager who took the money.
Oh, yeah. Yes, Polly. That's his surname, yes.
Yeah, Stan Polly. You know, we had a Wall Street accountant who was never brought to account. He was the man who looked after all the money and made sure Polly got it. There were a bunch of crooks. The agency, the booked us, were in on it. It was the complete showbiz ripoff.
It was a conspiracy, Joey. That's what they call it, criminal conspiracy.
That's what it is. It's nothing less. You know what we did? The only reason we came out of it all right was the last thing we did before the band broke up was we asked Apple to not pay any more money out, any more royalties. And Apple were cool enough to do that. What they did was they gave our royalties to a court account in London. And I'm talking about the Royal Courts and the Strand. They opened up a bank account, an escrow account, and all Badfinger's royalties from that point on were paid into that account. Pete's estate got his ASCAP royalties, and Tommy got his ASCAP royalties. But aside from that, all the record royalties and the songwriting royalties were paid into this account. And in 1985, we went to court in London. Mike Gibbons, Bill Collins, myself, Tommy's widow, because Tommy had committed suicide by then, and Pete's estate. We all went to court in London. We had an agreement between us about how royalties were shared. We all agreed what that agreement was. We had it drawn up, and the court ratified it. We all signed it, and the money was distributed to us in the shares afforded us by that agreement. And ever since then, we've all been paid according to the letter of that agreement. The money, it's paid to an accountant in London, and everybody gets the money.
And of course, Badfinger, Baby Blue was used in Breaking Bad. That would have got you a few pounds and pence or a few dollars and cents.
Absolutely. We really, mainly the licensing of the master is what made us money, because of the earnings nowadays. You earn very little money from those things. 1 million streams a day only makes you like $14 or something like that. It's ridiculous.
There's still crooks running the business, as you said, Joey. I know.
Oh, they are unbelievable. And you know what? They wouldn't pay us that if they could get away with it. It's not enough. They own all the music in the world. You have to pay the price. The public pays the price. It is really outrageous. People think musicians and songwriters and artists are being greedy by asking for the money, but it's only because we don't get paid. It's ridiculous. Happy birthday to you. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. All those songs that go back 100 years and longer than that, people don't get paid for it anymore. It's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. They've used our Badfinger songs, or Pete's Badfinger songs, I should say, in Martin Scorsese's used them in his movies, like you say, TV shows. And they're not the only songs that have been used. A lot of the songs have been used. And that's the only place where we might make a bit of money, because they pay for the performance of the song. Not only the writing, but the playing of it.
The mechanical rights, they call it here. I don't know if they call it there.
Yeah, they pay for those things. So we do get a little bit of money from that. It might sound like a lot of money, but it's so far between those things happening that it turns out to be a little bit of money. I'm not sitting here moaning and feeling all sorry for myself. I'm okay, I'm alive, I can go out and work and play. I've got a really lovely girlfriend. Sons are grown up and happy, thank the Lord.
Now, you resurrected after Pete died, the Airwaves album, and it was one of the very first records that I bought. Whose idea was it, you and Tommy's, to get the band back together? How did that come about?
I was playing with a couple of musicians from Chicago. They came and saw me in Los Angeles. I was living in Los Angeles with my wife, Kathy. And they came around to the house and they wanted me to play with them. They wanted to play me some songs they'd written, and they did. And I found the songs interesting and I started to play with them. It was good. They liked my 2 cents. It was all good. And we needed a bass player. And I called Tommy, and he's pretty much the only bass player I knew, and asked him what he was up to. And he wasn't up to anything. He was in London working, I think. He agreed he wanted to come over and play. So he came over and joined the band. Now, the band wasn't Badfinger. The band was just a band. And we went in, we wrote some songs and did that and did the rehearsals. And we were able to go in a studio, Sound City, California, and we recorded 4 or 5 demos. A couple of songs of Joe Tansini. He's a great songwriter, by the way. He's still out there doing it. A couple of songs for Tommy's and a couple of songs of mine. We also did a recut, actually, at that time, of Love Is Easy and Come and Get It. We got paid a little bit of money by KTEL Records for that. You remember those recut records they used to make?
Yes, I do.
And they pay you a penny a record. Is what you get paid for that. And we still get little tiny checks on them, like $25. We made the demos and we took them around Los Angeles and we went to Electra Asylum with them. And Steve Wax, who was the president, really liked them. He thought they were great. He stopped them actually on the second song. So what do you guys want? And so we got a deal together with them. And then they came up with the idea of calling the band Badfinger, because when Tommy and I sang together, it sounded like Badfinger. And it did sound like Badfinger, for crying out loud. So we ended up agreeing to it. It wasn't something we were after, and we certainly weren't trying to reform Badfinger. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you know about this, but about halfway through the recording, the drummer left. Kenny left the band, Kenny Hawk, and Mike Gibbons flew over. We called Mike, and he wasn't up to anything either. And he flew over and played drums with us, but because he hadn't played for a long while, he wasn't really up to scratch. That's what happens. And so we went back to Wales, and we ended up getting Andy Newmark, who was famous for playing with Sly Stone. And great drummer, he came in and did the record with us. Nicky Hopkins came and played with us. Tony Kaye came and played with us. And that's how Tony ended up in the band, in the Badfinger band. It was never our intention to call it, but that was the Airwaves album.
I quickly want to get into, before Airwaves and Say No More, you formed a band called Natural Gas, and they released one record, and I used to see it in the record shop because it was black and silver.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. The most notable thing about it. We had a great time. I was in London, actually, for Pete's funeral in 75. I got to say this as well, Warner Brothers were really gracious about that. They flew my wife and I back to England, paid all our expenses to go to his funeral. They didn't expect anything for it. They didn't make any deal with me or want me to do this or that. They just did it. So I got to give them kudos for that. We went back to the funeral. We were in London. I went to the bar in the hotel, and a friend of mine was sitting there, a guy named Mark Clark, who'd been playing with Uriah Heep. You might recall. He was playing bass in Uriah Heep. He'd also been with John Heisman's Colosseum for some time. Fabulous bass player and a great singer. And I didn't know it at the time, but he was also a really good songwriter. I asked him what he was up to, what he was doing. He said, oh, nothing much. I'm going out to Jerry Shirley's house. Jerry was the drummer in Humble Pie, and they'd broken up. On the last American tour they'd done at that time, they'd broken up. Mark was going up to Jerry's to have a jam with him because he knew Jerry pretty well, and he invited me along. So I went up there, Kathy and I went up there with him, and then we spent the weekend at Jerry's house. It was really nice. We had a little jam in Jerry's garage, and we enjoyed it so much we decided to put a band together.
There was natural gas between you all, was there?
Yeah, that's right. I think it was the carrot.
Now, after you did the Badfinger albums, now you've been releasing the odd solo album now and again. I've got After the Pearl and The Pilgrim, and I think Basil is a comp of songs as well. This Way Up, Return to Memphis. Did you go on the road and try and promote the albums as well?
Keep on writing songs. You don't stop getting ideas. You might stop working on them right away, but you still get your ideas. And I was afforded an opportunity in Minneapolis. Some friends of mine told me, this was 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, that if I wanted to, they had a studio and they would all come and play with me on Tuesday nights because they never used the studio on Tuesday. They would work with me. If I brought a new song on Tuesday night, they would record it with me. And so I did. I started taking songs down there. I ended up with like 35, 38 songs or something, demoed. And then, over the next few years, I got to be friendly with Mark Hudson. He became a great friend of mine, and he is a great friend of mine. And he asked me, did I have any songs? And was I interested in making another record? And of course, I'm getting on now. I'm 35 now, so I'm really getting on. And I was interested in making a new record. I mean, it seems like a bit of a pipe dream, doesn't it? But what do you know? Mark comes to me, and all of a sudden, we're in the studio in New York, and we're recording 10 of my songs that I'd done as demos. We're recording those, and I'm excited to say it sounds pretty good. It actually sounds like a record to me. Mark is a fabulous producer. He makes hit records.
Yes, he's worked a lot with Ringo Starr. I know that.
He's done, I think, Ringo's last 10 albums.
He's actually been a guest on the show. Is he the father of Kate, or is he the uncle of Kate? I'm not sure.
I think he's the father of Kate. Not sure either. I think he's the dad.
Quickly, last thing I want to mention is a few months ago you were working on the Raz Band's last album. You've worked a lot with the Raz Band, so that's out there as well too, Joey, isn't it? The Raz Band album?
Yeah, the Raz Band is really a kind of a good record, I think. It's a little bit different than the Badfinger records. It's a bit more rocky. I got the chance to produce this one finally, and we're hoping to go out and start working with the band here in the very near future.
You can't do that. You're too busy to do that. How's Todd and Chris Cross to work with? They're good blokes, are they?
Todd's been really sweet. Chris Cross too, lovely people. I'm trying to hold up my end of the show.
I'm sure you're doing well. Todd produced a Badfinger album, didn't he?
Yeah, and he actually performs that with me. He performs Baby Blue with me on the tour.
Such a great song, that one.
Yeah, huge song, yeah. A real rock beat group song.
Of course, it's Vince Gilligan with Breaking Bad. I think he's a fan of that as well.
Yeah, he was. He was kind enough to use the song as the kind of the finale Breaking Bad series.
Have you ever seen the show?
Yeah, I've seen the bits and pieces of it, and I saw that. I did see that episode as it happens. My son had asked me to record it, so I had it on when it played. I was astounded because I knew nothing about it.
It's an amazing TV series. Absolutely the best show ever made, and you guys have the privilege to have one of your songs in the best TV show ever made.
Isn't that incredible?
Such a compelling, amazing TV show. So brilliantly written.
It's one of my to-do things, that, because so many people have said that to me.
It's almost as good as listening to Gary Walker and the Rain's #1 album. That's how good it is, Joey. That's how good it is. That is a good album. Don't knock it.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank you very much.
Doing my best, man. I got a good life, so I ain't anxious to leave.
We'd love to see you here. I mean, it's a long way away, but we'd love to see you here.
I'd love to come and play for you. I'd love to just come out and play for you down there. It'd be great.
All right, Joey, I better let you go.
Thank you, man. You too, and all the best to you, boss.